Pleasant as crowds again clash with police. President Bush is back to work, but questions continue about the succession. And the area braced for a tornado watch. We'll have the very latest. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Angela Robinson with Morris Jones. Another evening of violence in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood of the district. Police disperse a rock-throwing crowd. Channel 5's Mike Ritz is standing by live with the very latest. Mike?
Angela, the Mount Pleasant neighborhood of Northwest Washington has literally turned into a battlefield for urban warfare. The air where we are at 16th and Columbia Road, 16th and Mount Pleasant Street, where they all merge, is filled with tear gas. People are coming by covering their mouths and their eyes to try to keep it away. Hundreds of people, mostly young people, teenagers, young adults, are scattered throughout the area, throwing rocks and bottles at literally every police car, every fire truck that goes by. You can see fire burning behind me right in the middle of 16th Street. Off to my side, less than 20 yards away, is the burning hulk of a car that was torched by the crowd. It is truly amazing what has happened here. It started off this afternoon with just a small group of rowdy teenagers in the street, and suddenly it became very ugly. Throughout the day, the police presence was heavy and extremely unpopular. A small group of about 20 rowdies started to protest in the middle of Mount Pleasant Street. After a small skirmish, things settled down. The situation remained tense, the crowd getting excited as the early TV news centered on them. Then, as the rain came, the police pulled out. The crowd was ecstatic. It seemed only a dozen or so people were at the center of the trouble. Occasional bottles and rocks flew, and then the crowd found an attractive target. The church's fried chicken restaurant was open for business when the crowd opened up with a barrage. Within seconds, the windows were smashed. Some customers and workers sneaked out. Others cowered inside. Looting came next. There was talk of burning the place. Finally, things calmed down. People were wondering, where were the police? Just before 7 o'clock, it was clear police had had enough. They gathered in Mount Pleasant Street and moved in. Before the police could move in, a Metro bus in the wrong place at the wrong time became the next target. The crowd taking great pleasure in smashing its windows. Amazingly, no one was hurt. Then the police made their move. Tear gas went flying. Hundreds of police converged. Hundreds of people scattered, hurling more bottles and rocks as they retreated. The tear gas was effective. Mount Pleasant Street was recaptured. One final target of the crowd, a Channel 5 news crew car. Unfortunately for us, it looked too much like an unmarked police cruiser. As the evening progressed, so did the violence. Bottles and rocks flying. And again, more looting. Inevitably, more tear gas. And finally, another car gets torched. This evening is far from over. You might hear the D.C. police helicopter overhead as it tries to find looters and people throwing rocks and bottles on the street. Down on the other end of Mount Pleasant Street is Channel 5's Jan Smith with more on the story. Jan?
Yes, Mike, there have been flashes of fire and violence here since darkness at 16th and Newton Streets. Often the police and the fire department haven't even tried to keep the situation under control. Sometimes they've even been chased off by the crowds. Right now, it's a standoff. It's been an exchange of rocks and tear gas at this end of Mount Pleasant. At one point, when crowds were throwing rocks at the police drove off instead of doing anything to bring the crowds under control. Cars and dumpsters have been torched on fire. Some out on the street say the frustration is so pent up, this protest could go on for days.
Basically, this is just a result of a lot of anger from years.
You think that this violence helps it?
What are you trying to say? I don't think so, but it's just the best way that they can express themselves, because a lot of people around here, they don't have papers, you know, they're illegal aliens, and whenever they get a beating from the police, it's like they cannot put a complaint from people, that's all. And I guess this is the best way they can express themselves.
It is not just a neighborhood dispute. Other area residents have moved in to join the violent exchange.
It has attracted a lot of people, but I mean, you ask for violence, this is what you get.
We've been caught in the crossfire too. Our van has been hit by both rocks and tear gas. Reporter Ron Gardner talked with Mayor Sharon Pratt Dixon earlier tonight. Ron, what did she have to say?
Jan, we're here at the intersection of Mount Pleasant Road and Columbia Road, where Mike Ritz was reporting from just a few moments ago. This area has been cleared for the past 20 minutes or so. That was not the case about 9 o'clock when the police command center was visited by Mayor Dixon, and she rode in a motorcade up north from here to look at some of the damage, and when she returned, she gave us her assessment of what she had seen. Here's what Mayor Dixon had to say then.
Well, we have a serious civil disturbance here in the Mount Pleasant community, and the police are moving, I think, quite skillfully to try to disperse it. But the result of it is that a lot of it is spilling over into other streets. We are trying very hard to contain this by simply using tear gas. But if that doesn't work, then we're going to take the next step, including arrest.
As you heard her say, the next step is to make arrests. Now, shortly after I spoke with her, Chief Fullwood came out of the command center, and I had a brief conversation with him about what the next step would be if their current strategy doesn't work, which is simply to try to contain these relatively small groups of people, make periodic arrest of certain troublemakers as they can try to get them away from the main group of the crowd, and hope that the crowd will disperse and move to another area. And their hope is that by arresting some of the key troublemakers, that the rest of the people will eventually disperse. As Chief Fullwood put it, that's a long-term, a long-range type of a program. You don't get any immediate results that way. But as he explained, they're in kind of a catch-22 situation here. There are a lot of large apartment buildings around here, and we can look across the street. There are huge crowds of people looking out the windows and gathered in the lobbies of these buildings. These are innocent people who are suffering now because of all this tear gas that has been fired in the area. And Chief Fullwood said we're trying not to use any more tear gas than we absolutely have to, because it's extremely unfair to all these people in these buildings here. And I can tell you from what Mike Ritz and I have experienced here in the last few minutes, these people are in for a long, miserable night. For no apparent reason, about 10 minutes before we went on the air, one of the police vans drove by and dropped a tear gas canister right at the front of our truck when there's virtually no one here at that moment but us and a few other press people standing around. But anyway, forgive me, it's kind of a frustrating situation out here. Their plan is to continue this containment, the periodic arrest of the key troublemakers. And when I asked Chief Fullwood if that doesn't calm things down within the next 2 or 3 hours, what's the next step, all he would say is, we're sure that this plan is going to work, and this is what we're going to continue to do. Angie Morris.
All right, thank you. Ron Gardner, Mike Ritz, and Jan Smith. We'll check back with you a little later on in the show. Morris.
Well, police have been forced to cover a wider area tonight as demonstrators made their way into the heart of Adams Morgan. There are reports of damage to a few businesses in the area around 18th and Columbia Road. The crowd dispersed after police fired a round of tear gas. It's far from the hot and humid days of summer, and authorities were hoping the violence that broke out last night would have ended with today's rain. But the skies cleared, and some protesters reportedly said they were back for revenge after last night. Just 2 miles from the White House, a quiet Sunday night erupting into violence after police say a man brandishing a knife was shot by an officer trying to arrest him. Some witnesses have claimed there was no such provocation for the officer. The suspect, 30-year-old Daniel Gomez, was hospitalized in critical condition with a gunshot wound in the chest. 8 people were arrested, including Gomez. Police say the incident was triggered when the crowd took issue with a warning about drinking in a public park. A melee broke out and grew as more than 150 youths began pelting police and storefronts with rocks and bottles.
Up here! Up here!
least 10 officers were injured, and the youths turned over and burned 5 squad cars. One observer to last night's violence said some rioters were not amateurs because they reportedly relit flares and put them in the police car gas tanks. The violence in Mount Pleasant has come as a shock to most district leaders. As Channel 5's David Burnett reports, members of the Hispanic community and city government officials are looking into the hows and whys.
The disturbance in Mount Pleasant opened up a virtual Pandora's box of issues facing Hispanic residents in the district. Poverty, joblessness, cultural and language barriers have meant isolation for some in D.C.'s Latino community. And many believe those problems are being ignored by the city, particularly the new mayor, Sharon Pratt Dixon. Some warn that unless the mayor and other city officials act quickly to address the simmering concerns here in Mount Pleasant and other Hispanic communities, there will be more problems and perhaps yet another disturbance.
She needs to foster an environment of understanding, a willingness to dialogue, and take some action.
Rudy Arredondo was among a number of community leaders who met with Police Chief Isaac Fullwood and City Administrator Jack Bond to seek answers about the police shooting that led to the disturbance and vent their frustrations about what they believe to be its underlying causes. The meeting here would end with some Hispanic leaders walking out.
We need to know that here our human rights are going to be respected by the administration, and we want the Mayor Sharon Dixon to understand the frustration in the community, to get in touch with her and to discuss issues in a long-term basis.
In Northeast Washington, at the headquarters of La Rosa, an advocacy group for Hispanics, more concerns were voiced.
I think it's very clear from what little evidence that we've gotten so far that we're not talking about an isolated incident. We're not talking about one police person shooting one person. That what we're talking about is a fairly chronic, endemic situation that permeates not only the police department, but a variety of city agencies.
There is a situation of oppression, we like it or not, the term, of a community, an entire community that is living de facto and formally as second-class citizens, as second-class residents in this country.
For many people, what happened is the byproduct of a general lack of respect many Hispanics have experienced here in Washington, something that has made them feel left out and angry. David Burnett, Fox News.
Some potential violence in our weather. Earlier this evening, the area was under a tornado watch. Sue Palka is here with us now to give us an update on what happened. Sue?
Well, Angie, I'm happy to report that the tornado watch has now expired, and there were 3 reports of funnel clouds around the Washington metropolitan area. No tornadoes, which means those funnel clouds did not touch the ground. Those reports were coming from Shepherdstown, West Virginia, the Fair Oaks section of Fairfax County, as well as near Salisbury, Maryland at about 8 o'clock. Here's how it looked earlier tonight as we were watching those very windy thunderstorms move through our region. First, the sky turned black from sunshine to darkness in about 15 minutes, and you can see the rain was very, very heavy. We had about 15 minutes worth of heavy rain. That was enough to bring Washington National about an inch of rain. You can see that it made things a little rough going and slow going for the rush hour today. But as the night wore on and give those thunderstorms about 45 minutes, we saw clearing skies behind them, and we should continue to see clearing throughout the night. Now on radar right now, we can show you where those storms have gotten to over south central New Jersey through the lower portion of the bay, extending down to about Williamsburg, Virginia. They should continue pushing off, and again, all watches and warnings expired. Briefly, here are a few of the severe thunderstorm damage reports that we did get, including a wind gust to about 70 miles per hour up in Frederick County, trees down in Montgomery around the Potomac area, 40-mile-per-hour gusts in Loudoun, and a lot of reports of small hail. So the main feature with these storms were the gusty winds, but those same gusty winds have pushed them right out of our area. When I join you a little later, we'll show you some of the damage, though, that they had in Emmitsburg, Maryland, and a complete sunny forecast for the rest of the week. Stay with us.
Thank you, Sue. Still ahead on the 10 o'clock news, an update on this night of violence and tension in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood. The nation's #1 patient gets his walking papers, but has his medical problem disappeared?
Also ahead is the president's understudy ready to assume the title role. Stay with us.
The next time your house needs repainting, the choice is yours. You can try and save money by doing it yourself, scraping and painting away all your free time. You can hire a professional to do it and then have him keep coming back every few years. Or you can make the exterior of your home virtually maintenance-free by calling Sears now at this toll-free number. You see, siding from Sears stands up to summer's heat and winter's damp and chill to keep your house looking great year after year without the bother and expense of frequent repainting.
And here's great news if you like to save money. Call this number now and you can save 15% off the regular price of siding from Sears. That's a 15% savings.
Most wood-sided or trimmed houses require painting every 3 to 4 years at increasing costs. But solid vinyl siding from Sears is tested to assure long-lasting performance. Look, you can pound on it with a hammer. It won't dent. You can grind on it with sandpaper. It won't scratch and the color won't rub off. Through blistering summers and brutal winters, year after year, siding from Sears is the logical choice for your home. Best of all, because your siding is from Sears, you can be sure that Sears will continue to stand behind the quality and workmanship of every job. You can trust your home to Sears. Just call this number now for a free in-home estimate and Sears will take care of the rest. We'll help you select siding that's just right for your home, provide quality professional installation, and even show you convenient credit plans sure to fit almost any budget. So the choice is yours to face the bother and expense of repainting every few years or have the convenience, beauty, and satisfaction of siding from Sears.
Now, whether your home is made of wood, stucco, or brick, you can find out everything about attractive, economical vinyl siding from Sears at no obligation. Call now toll-free 1-800-532-5566 to find out how Sears can make your home look new, eliminate frequent house painting, and help increase the value of your home. Call 1-800-532-5566 now, and Sears Siding will show you how to get your money's worth and a whole lot more.
Riveting, heart-pounding, edge-of-your-seat suspense.
He tried to kill me!
The original thriller, FX, Wednesday.
After a night that saw some improvement in the president's heartbeat, a positive and upbeat President Bush appears to be fully back on the job. We begin our coverage on the president's condition and his first day back to work with Channel 5's Brian Wilson.
As he departed Bethesda Naval Hospital, the president's heart was still beating irregularly, but he looked and felt fine.
Feel all right. Just got to get over and get back to work. Keep a little monitor going here.
The president's doctors decided not to use electrical shock therapy to normalize his heartbeat after it appeared that 2 medicines were having the desired effect.
Since he has had such a nice response to the drugs, that we would continue to try these drugs, monitor the doses, and get the president out of the hospital and back to the White House, where we are excellently set up to do that.
But for at least a few days, there will be no jogging for President Bush. Under doctor's orders, no strenuous exercise.
We did ask that, given his level of intense physical activity, that at least he modify that slightly while we made some fine-tuning in the medicines, and that he cut back a little bit during that time. We encouraged him actually to resume his daily work schedule upon arrival back at the White House.
The president's medical team still has no clue as to what caused the irregular heartbeat, but admit that recently the president had complained of being tired.
This came out of the blue.
He never complained of fatigue like this before.
No. Well, he has said to me in the last couple of weeks, gee whiz, maybe I'm getting older. But at that time, there was nothing there.
At some point, doctors say they may want to monitor the president's heartbeat on a continual basis. There are about a half a dozen technologies available for that. The president could carry a small transmitter or perhaps a recording device. Doctors say they'll make a decision about that after they see how the president reacts to his medication. At Bethesda Naval Hospital, Brian Wilson, Fox News.
This is Patrick McGrath at the White House, where President Bush returned to a warm welcome. President Bush was clearly a very relieved man to be back at the White House and not in the hospital. He pronounced himself ready to go back to work.
Not much, kind of worked back into it, but I think it's okay. Yeah, we can start again. He said today if I want to, but I'm not sure I feel up to it yet.
What do you think about all the talk of the competence of Vice President Quayle?
Hey, he has my full support, always has, and he's doing a first-class job. Hey, listen, it's great to be back.
The president's first public event was an afternoon meeting with former Soviet Foreign Minister Eduard Shevardnadze.
I hope when you go back, you'll pay my great respects to
President Gorbachev.
The president tried to change the subject to foreign affairs, but reporters, who could still see evidence of the president's hospital stay on his wrist, wanted to know more about his medical condition.
Is your heartbeat back to normal,
Yeah.
Mr. President? How does the medication feel? Do you have
feel
any
it.
effects at all?
No, feel good.
Have you had this shortness of breath problem before?
Сердце, как сердце бьет.
Talk to my doctor, will you?
Поговорить с моим врачом.
I'm just glad to be here.
Я рад быть в Белом доме.
This is the first shot they've had at me
Первый раз.
since I came out of the hospital.
President Bush will be 67 years old next month, and while he is clearly in excellent shape for a man his age, his image of youthful, vigorous invincibility has been tarnished at least a little. And some voters may now wonder whether Dan Quayle may now be an irregular heartbeat away from the presidency. From the White House, Patrick McGrath, Fox News.
Former President Ronald Reagan says he wonders if President Bush should still be jogging. During a telephone call from California yesterday, the former president told Mr. Bush that he and Nancy wished him well and they were concerned about the president's health.
As he returned to the White House, President Bush fended off nagging questions about Vice President Dan Quayle's ability to replace him. Channel 5's Niles Latham has this report.
Dan Quayle was back to doing what vice presidents normally do. Just hours after he welcomed the president back at the White House, Quayle went on with his daily chores, which on this day included an appearance to lobby business leaders on trade. But he also tried to answer his critics with humor, invoking the name of the legendary Nolan Ryan, the oldest player in baseball.
Nolan Ryan, 44 years old, same old age I am, throwing another no-hit game, and I love it when I hear the media describe someone 44 years of age as mature and well-seasoned.
But for Quayle and his advisors, the issue is no joking matter. Quayle took a beating on the talk show circuit over the weekend, as the president's health scare once again brought attention to public doubts about Quayle being a heartbeat away from the Oval Office. A new poll shows only 19% of the people think he's qualified to be president, a number that's going down ever since he took office. But with Bush back at the White House and the 25th Amendment back in its folder, the administration worked hard to brush aside the uproar over Quayle's competency.
I know that he knows the issues well. He addresses the issues very well. He has good command of very technical issues, and he has a lot of respect, not only within the administration, but up on the Hill. And I don't think the American people are being told that.
But will the recent spotlight on Quayle hurt George Bush politically? Michael McCurry, a former campaign advisor to Democratic vice presidential nominee Lloyd Bentsen, concedes that efforts to use the Quayle factor against Bush were unsuccessful in the 1988 campaign.
Frankly, the vice president is not a real factor in political life, and unless Dan Quayle does something to enormously screw up, or unless the president is much more ill than these reports would seem to indicate, I can't see that this would emerge as a big issue.
According to White House officials, the subject of Dan Quayle is basically a moot point. They say the president has already made a decision that Dan Quayle will be his running mate next year. Niles Latham, Fox News, at the Vice Presidential Mansion.
Still to come, a live update on the tense situation in Mount Pleasant. Stay tuned for the very latest. Also, arms for hostages. What did George Bush know and when did he know it? A former Iranian president tells his story.
And is the chairman of Chrysler getting ready to step into a seat on Capitol Hill?
Or a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, the medicine go down.
The Walt Disney Family Classic is back.
Mary Poppins, practically perfect in every way.
And there's only one word that can describe it. Academy Award winner Julie Andrews. In the Walt Disney Motion Picture Classic, Mary Poppins.
A special treat, Tuesday at 7 on Channel 5.
How do you find the best doctors in Washington, D.C.?
Hello, Prologue. This is Laura. May I help you find a doctor?
I sure hope so.
I do too. How can I help?
Well, I live north of the city and I'm having a hard time finding a doctor and I'm getting a little frustrated.
What seems to be the problem?
Well, I don't really know, but I'm a little nervous about going to a new doctor.
Don't worry. Everybody is. Do you have any symptoms?
Sometimes I think I have everyone in the book.
I know how that feels.
I have a pain in my right side and a temperature, and I've had
had the fever for 3 days.
I'm showing 3 internists right near you. All 3 are board certified and are associated with a hospital in your neighborhood. 2 have been in practice for 6 years. The other's been in practice for 12.
Can you tell me more about the third doctor?
Sure, I can tell you. He's married, he's 37, has 3 children. He graduated with honors, and his philosophy of practice looks like what you've been asking for.
I think he sounds perfect.
Would you like to make an appointment right now?
Yes, please.
I hate bars. All the men stand on one side, the women stand on the other, and nobody talks.
I'm not going to answer a personal ad. They're too impersonal for me.
I'm tired of all my friends trying to set me up.
Together introduces you to fun, active people who want to be with you. I forgot dating could be so much fun. Call Together. They can help.
Together has 7 offices in the Washington-Baltimore area. Consult your yellow pages for the office nearest you.
Angela's crew messes up Tony's kitchen.
My beautiful, immaculate kitchen. What have you done, you barbarian?
Tuesday at 6 on Channel 5.
Secretary of State James Baker is packing his bags and heading back to the Middle East for another round of talks with Arabs and Israelis. It's Baker's 4th trip to the troubled region since the war ended. The secretary is scheduled to visit Egypt, Israel, Syria, and Jordan, hoping to organize a regional peace conference under joint U.S.-Soviet sponsorship.
Memories of the Iran hostage crisis were brought back to life today here in Washington. And as stories continue to circulate that the Reagan-Bush administration delayed the release of those hostages, the former president of Iran has stepped forward to tell his version of what happened. Channel 5's Jan Smith has more.
The exiled president of Iran, Abul Hassan Bani Sadr, is in Washington with an interpreter at his side and haunting the White House with old stories reprinted in a new book. Titled My Turn to Speak, Bani Sadr recycles allegations that in 1980, then vice presidential candidate George Bush took part in secret talks in Paris to swap arms for hostages and sway the election.
In my book, I'm not saying that he was there. I'm saying that there are sources who say he was there.
Last week, President Bush angrily denied the assertions.
Ever in Paris in 1980? Definitively, definitely, no.
But it's not important whether he was there or not. As far as I'm concerned, the significance of it is that something has happened. A secret deal was taking place, and President Bush has not denied that.
The big deal, according to Bani Sadr and according to former Carter official Gary Sick, may have been orchestrated by now-deceased William Casey, then the campaign manager for the Reagan-Bush team. Both Bani Sadr and Gary Sick say there is evidence the Reagan-Bush campaign promised to provide arms to Iran if the 52 American hostages remained in captivity until after the 1980 election. Bani Sadr's book has attracted attention on Capitol Hill, where he will meet with members of the House Foreign Affairs Committee on Wednesday.
But what we're looking for, of course, is something more substantial in terms of documentary evidence, greater credibility from some of the foreign witnesses involved. So I think a lot needs to be done before any judgments are made about where we proceed from this point.
Congressman Hamilton says if the allegations prove to be true, there would be very serious violations of the constitutional process. And that's why it's appropriate for members of Congress to take a look and try to find out more about what's behind the claims that won't go away. Jan Smith, Fox News.
Lark McCarthy will have a complete interview with former Iranian President Bani Sadr tomorrow on the Fox Morning News.
When the 10 o'clock news continues, an update on the continuing unrest in Mount Pleasant and why the worst may not be over for a cyclone-ravaged Bangladesh.
And a last-minute detour by Discovery didn't stop a picture-perfect landing. Community, and we just want to say again, Mayor Dixon has given the authority to police to use extreme force. Morris?
Well, in other news around the world tonight, Mother Nature continues to wreak havoc in Bangladesh as stormy weather is hampering the nation's relief efforts. 125,000 people have already died from last week's cyclone and aftermath. Flooded roads and a lack of helicopters are making it nearly impossible to reach remote areas where food and medicine are in short supply.
Wall Street recovered from early morning lows to close just a fraction higher in quiet trading. The Dow Jones Industrial Average edged up less than 3 points to finish the day at 2941.64. Trading was on the slow side, with less than 124 million shares changing hands.
Despite an 11th hour detour, the Space Shuttle Discovery still managed a picture-perfect landing in Florida. The shuttle and its 7 astronauts were diverted to the Florida landing site because of high winds in California. Discovery touched down after an 8-day mission to conduct experiments for the Star Wars missile defense system.
Stay with us, more on the situation in Mount Pleasant, but right now it's time for a weather update.
Let's check in with Sue Palka in the Weather Center. Sue?
Well, at least things have settled down in the weather department, I can tell you that much. The tornado watch has been canceled. We are watching the thunderstorms move away from Washington. And they brought in a big change in weather, too. Let me tell you, today's high was 82 degrees. I'm sure you felt that humidity. It was kind of stifling. The clouds moved in. Our temperature dropped to our current low of 60 degrees, 58 at Dulles. We'll come back and give you the complete outlook for the rest of the week and a wrap up on today's storms, too. Stay with us.
Athletes, star outfielder Lenny Dykstra and catcher Darren Dalton were badly injured after Dykstra wrecked his 1991 Mercedes coming home from a bachelor party for teammate John Kruk in suburban Philly. Dykstra broke his ribs, right collarbone, and right cheekbone. He's been placed on the 60-day disabled list. Dalton scratched his cornea, may have broken his eye socket. He's on a 30-day disabled list. Dykstra's blood test confirmed he was legally drunk. Neither men were wearing seatbelts. Both are in stable condition. Even the guys who are supposed to know how to drive got all banged up today. Winston 500, postponed yesterday by rain, won today by Harry Gant. Talladega, Alabama, lap 71. Kyle Petty and pole sitter Ernie Irvin get tangled up. Now you'll see in the middle of your screen the accident which sets off a chain reaction that involves nearly half of the 41-car field. I believe we have the tape, but possibly not. Doesn't look like it. Harry Gant won the race. Darrell Waltrip came in second. Dale Earnhardt was third. Kyle Petty suffered a broken leg. Everybody else in the race was okay. So it was Harry on the track at Talladega, but luckily only one injury, not as serious as it could have been. Harry Gant, a winner, $81,000 for first place money.
Okay.
Oh, goodness.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, now let's head back to the Mount Pleasant area where our Mike Ritz is standing by live with the very latest. Michael?
All right, Angela, as we told you earlier, this violence has spread from just Mount Pleasant Street. Some of the violence has gone over to 14th Street. 14th and Park, one of the more dramatic scenes this evening. We have some tape of what happened there just a short time ago. The People's Drug Store at 14th and Park, which is the center of the neighborhood. Customers are streaming in and out of that store all day, all night long. If you've ever been over here, you realize how important that store is. At any rate, the people who were causing the trouble on this street decided to move over there when the police were chasing them, and they started to vandalize that People's. And apparently we don't have that tape for you at this stage. But also in the same neighborhood is a giant food store, and that also became a target for the looters. Anything that had a glass front was easy prey, and rocks and bottles went through, and following the rocks and bottles invariably went looters. And this event is far from over this evening. As you can hear overhead, the police helicopter going by, tear gas is still in the air, and as we reported earlier, Mayor Sharon Pratt Dixon has given the police the go-ahead to use all the force that is necessary. And now you're looking at the Peoples from 14th and Park, and they had to rescue an innocent victim of this whole affair. A worker at Peoples was trapped inside. They cut through the delivery entrance through the sidewalk to pull that man out, and as you probably got a glimpse, he was smiling and obviously quite relieved. A scene that was similar earlier today, the Church's Fried Chicken here on Mount Pleasant Street. Employees and customers cowering in the bathroom, and finally they were able to get out once the looters and vandals went away. Again, Mount Pleasant is still an area that is not at all under control. Small bands of people throughout the neighborhood throwing rocks, still getting rowdy, small fires burning, and police and fire officials trying to get it under control, but as of right now, they don't have it. Angela Morris.
Full coverage on the Fox Morning News starting at 6:30. Of course, we'll have more tomorrow night at 10. That's our news for this evening. For Sue, Angela, Steve, and the rest of the team, I'm Morris Jones. We'll see you again tomorrow night, 10 o'clock.
Police later fired tear gas to control the crowd of mostly Hispanic youths as they burned and looted the property in the city's Mount Pleasant area, located just 2 miles from the White House. 13 police officers were injured and 13 squad cars damaged in the latest melee. The rioting began Sunday night after police shot a man they were trying to arrest. One activist said the tensions between the city's Hispanic community and police have been increasing lately. When announcing the curfew, Washington Mayor Sharon Pratt Dixon said police are prepared to make mass arrests if necessary.
We have exercised restraint because our hope was to be able to resolve it through dialogue with the community and by using tear gas so we could avoid confrontation. But now that that has not worked, since there are those who simply refuse to respect the law, we're now prepared to arrest. And we think that in view of the emergency, it will strengthen their hand to have this curfew.
We haven't had any major injury to any citizen. We haven't had any major injury to a police officer. The police officers have acted with great restraint. The mayor is on the scene to make sure that all of the government resources that we have are brought to bear on this problem. We're going to bring this thing under control. The mayor is committed to doing the long-range things to address the systemic problems that we now face.
During yesterday's violence, firefighters broke into the basement of a store to rescue a man hiding from rioters. The man says he was trapped there when the building caught fire. Although he says he feared he might die, he was rescued unharmed. President Bush is back at work after a 39-hour hospital stay for treatment of an irregular heartbeat. Shortly after his release yesterday, the president's heart resumed its normal pace. A heart monitor is now strapped around his waist. The president was hospitalized Saturday after he reported suffering from a shortness of breath while jogging. Mr. Bush's doctors are optimistic he'll be back to normal in a few days. They dismiss stress and jogging as the cause for the problem, but First Lady Barbara Bush thinks coffee may be a culprit.
Do I think he should slow down? Look, I've been married to him 46 years, and I'm not going to try to change him now. It had nothing to do with that, you know. It has to do with other things. It's not stress or whatever. It has to do with other factors.
A White House nurse monitored the president's heartbeat throughout the day yesterday amid meetings with former Soviet Foreign Minister Edward Shevardnadze and numerous other visitors. U.S. Secretary of State James Baker also met with Shevardnadze in Washington. Baker will return to the Middle East Friday. Has hit the community hard, and the worst may not be over yet.
They're filling up sandbags, reinforcing the levees in Monroe, Louisiana, fighting to hold back the floodwaters that have poured out of the Chauvin Basin, turning streets into waterways, residential areas into lakes.
It's horrible. It's not just the physical part of it that drains you, but it's a mental exhaustion for everyone.
Residents have been battling floodwaters for more than a week with mixed success. Carolyn Clary was one of the lucky ones on her block. Her home sat slightly higher than her neighbors, and that gave her time to protect it.
We were able to get a truck and put our furniture on it and able to get our sandbags around, and we're pumping the seepage out.
Other residents haven't been as fortunate. A housing development called River Oaks now looks much like a river. Several homes have 5 to 6 feet of water in them.
It makes you feel helpless. You can't do nothing but watch it. You fight it, and then you go as far as you can go, and that's all you can do.
Heavy thunderstorms in northern Louisiana have filled the Ouachita River, as well as bayous and drainage canals in Monroe.
The water that we've got now, 2 days ago, reached the highest that it had been since we've kept records beginning in 1884.
Large pumps have been set up, and even fire department trucks have been called into service in an attempt to drain the water out of residential areas. The Salvation Army is delivering food to those staying in the flooded areas, and the Red Cross has set up shelters for those forced to leave their homes. Residents are salvaging what they can, simply trying to make the best of it. At Wayne Landrum's grocery, the flooded parking lot is jokingly called Landrum's Lake.
What else are you going to do? Just get a grip and go on.
People here in Monroe hope the worst is over. The water level in some of the residential areas dropped slightly Monday. The sun came out and the sky was clear. But more water appears headed this way. The Ouachita River is expected to crest at Monroe on Thursday, and that could mean even more flooding. Tony Clark, CNN, Monroe, Louisiana.
Next, in Dollars and Cents, a report on a major merger and the latest in business and
emergency in the district's Mount Pleasant and Adams Morgan neighborhoods. A curfew in the area was lifted about 90 minutes ago, capping a second night of disturbances in the largely Hispanic area. Police report more than 40 arrests. The Mount Pleasant neighborhood appears to be quiet at this hour. Channel 5's David Burnett is standing by live on Mount Pleasant Street in Northwest with the latest. Good morning, David.
Well, good morning, Lark. As you mentioned, it appears a lot quieter today, but one thing that's in evidence today that wasn't in evidence yesterday at the same time is the increased police presence all up and down Mount Pleasant Street. You see police officers in cars, on foot. They're patrolling the streets. I guess clearly they don't want a repeat of what happened yesterday afternoon. As you also mentioned, a curfew was declared last night as well as a state of emergency. It's only the third time in the city's history a state of emergency has been declared.
Police squared off against rock-throwing youths for the second time in as many days as the streets of Mount Pleasant erupted in violence. Rioters wielding baseball bats, rocks, whatever they could get their hands on, attacked police once more, burning and looting anything they happened upon. Mayor Sharon Pratt Dixon met with Hispanic leaders earlier in the day and later toured the area, but that walk was cut short when tear gas was fired nearby.
Find you somewhere to get behind, man. Corey. Mike Fox, Corey.
That was just tear gas, not the
By late evening, the violence had spread to Adams Morgan and the surrounding area, forcing the mayor to declare a state of emergency and impose a midnight to 5 a.m. curfew.
The situation is such that we think that it's clearly a state of emergency, and as such, it's appropriate to declare a curfew.
Do you have a number of buttons?
That was Mayor Sharon Pratt Dixon, who yesterday spent a lot of time going throughout the community and declared that state of emergency. She was up, in fact, until the early hours of the morning. She said she intends to form a task force with community leaders, city leaders, as well as many Hispanic leaders to try and get to the root causes of some of the problems in this community. Also mentioned was the violence and vandalism spreading to other parts of the community. We had reports of violence and vandalism as far away to the east as 14th Street and to the west as 18th Street in the Adams Morgan section of town. Police certainly don't want this thing spreading any further and want to try to contain it and put things, quiet it down just a little bit more. And right now, nobody has very many answers to what is going on, and they hope to try and have some more answers today. Lark?
Thank you, David, and we'll have more from David Burnett throughout the broadcast. D.C. Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton says a greater understanding of Hispanic issues is the key to preventing further violence. She's scheduled a meeting next week with several members of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. Norton has also extended an invitation to Mayor Sharon Pratt Dixon. Norton says advice from the Hispanic Caucus should be helpful to the district. President Bush is back on the job full-time this morning. A heart monitor, perhaps the only visible sign of his bout with an irregular heartbeat. Channel 5's Alexander Kippen is at the White House with the latest on the president's condition. Good morning, Alexander.
Well, good morning, Lark. President Bush appears to be sticking to the schedule mapped out for him last week before any of his heart trouble. On the agenda today, for example, are meetings with the leaders of Finland and Italy, as well as members of Congress, all that in addition to his usual schedule. To show that the president is working at his typical pace, the White House allowed cameras in more than usual yesterday to photograph the president at work. One item on the work schedule, only hours after returning from hospital, was a meeting with the Soviet Union's former foreign minister, Edward Shevardnadze, where Fox News asked the president about his health.
How does the medication feel?
Don't feel it. No, feel good.
Have you had this shortness of breath problem before?
Not that I've noticed. Talk to my doctor, will you? I'm just glad to be here.
The White House and doctors insist that the president should be able to continue working and working out at the usual pace, wearing only that small monitor you mentioned to gauge his fluctuating heart rate. Lark?
Thank you, Alexander Kippen at the White House. Police in Palm Beach, Florida are reportedly recommending that William Kennedy Smith be charged in the alleged rape at the Kennedy family estate on Easter weekend. The New York newspaper Newsday says officials are recommending a second-degree sexual battery charge to the prosecutor. That's the same charge as rape in other states. The newspaper also says police want the prosecutor to charge Smith directly rather than send the case to a grand jury. Smith, a 30-year-old Georgetown University medical student, has denied any wrongdoing. It's 6:36. Let's get our first look at weather and traffic. It was quite a stormy afternoon late yesterday. Let's see what's in store today. Here's Dave. Good morning.
It's the calm after the storm. We're going to have just a great day today. A few clouds out there this morning, but we'll get rid of those and see lots of sunshine. Current temperature 55 degrees under mostly cloudy skies officially at National Airport. Winds are still kicking up. They're currently out of the north.